All right, welcome back. Here we are in Markets, Chapter 5, Packet 3, I think, 4. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, Packet 4. Holy cow, time flies. Let's say once upon a time in New York City, there are apartments for rent. And those apartments are rented, and people like apartments. There's a supply of them and a demand of them. Now, in real life, if we had time in the class, I might explain that the elasticity of supply of apartments is way more vertical than what I show here. However, for purposes of basic instruction, we'll ignore that. You get on to other things, you'll have to understand it. Anyway, over the years, the demand curve keeps shifting to the right. Demand curve shifts to the right, it shifts to the right, it shifts to the right, and as you can see over the years, that the prices will rise. They'll go up, up, up. However, that's not what we're worried about right now so much. We understand that each year the demand curve shifts to the right, and each year typically an apartment landlord, owner, will require an increase in rent because the price goes up, so he asks for an increase in rent. After some time, back decades ago, people complained. They said, but the prices are going too high. We can't afford to live here anymore. We want to move to Jersey. Oh my gosh, no. So they complained. And who would they complain to? Of course, the government. Now we're talking about distortions here. And if you read your packet, a distortion is when an economic market, supplier and demanders working together, establishing X marks the spot, everything working okay. A distortion is when a third party steps in and messes it up. A third party is not supplier. A third party is not demander. A third party is typically government, could also be unions, could also be insurance companies and other agents who are not suppliers, not demanders. Well, the demand curve, like I said, as you can understand, is shifting to the right each year and the price is going up. X increases, moves up. So there are more apartments available, but at a higher price. So rent control was proposed by a person in the government of the city of New York. He was complained to multiple times, and he has nothing but care and love for his constituents, of course. So to help them, and notice I'm using air quotes that you can't see, to help them, he passed a law through the city, and it went through, that says landlords cannot increase the rent beyond the rate of inflation. I say again, landlords cannot increase the rent beyond the rate of inflation. So let's jump forward after that. Okay, the law was established, so here we cap whatever price at the time, we cap it. Can't go above this price anymore. That's it. Let's jump forward a few years. And like I've noted to you, the demand curve keeps shifting to the right and shifting to the right and shifting to the right. So we're jumping forward a few years, and now we're going to assume that this is the new X marks the spot, okay? We're going to assume that. And I'm going to slide that one on down here so that this is back several years ago and this is now. Only I'm going to take that demand curve and assume this demand curve is now. So several years ago demand curve is back here. You get it? What I'm telling you is that I've taken this whole scenario and moved it forward a few years after the rent control. So the rent control went into effect. Wow, there we go. Rent control went into effect, and here's our demand curve. Well, that's what it was back in the day when they established, that was back in the day when they established the rent control, right? So here's the price at the time. We'll now call it P low because it's low. It's not today's X marks the spot. And at that price, we hit the supply curve here. So here's our supply curve, QS. And this is really not easy to draw with a mouse. Now this demand curve is back in the day, so I'm going to get rid of it because the demand curve now is D1. So let me get rid of demand curve old. but that was the price. So we're taking that price and we're shooting across now to hit the new today's demand curve. And that bad boy gives me QD. So here's my quantity demanded. Now notice what's the difference between these two. This difference is normally called a surplus, right? No, it's a shortage, man. QD is greater than QS. Here's 0, there's QD. Here's 0, here's QS. And the difference is a shortage. Now, normally, you know, in previous lesson, last week's lesson, that shortage should go away because the pressure among demanders is greater, pushing upward to X. So this price should move up to X. It's a natural thing. I mean, come on. Like pirates, right? Pirates always want to go to X. So what's stopping them, though, from going upward is this old price established by the government. It was called rent control. I say again, rent control. Now, rent control is not a good thing. There's a famous economist, you can look him up right now if you want to. A famous economist said, the best way to destroy a city is bombing. The second is rent control. Or I think he said, rent control is the second best way to destroy a city. The first is bombing. Anyway, you understand. This is not good. Let me explain. So we take our old price that was at the old X marks the spot when they passed the law and everybody was happy and it seemed to work out. But as time progressed and people wanted to move into the city, change in number of buyers, tastes and preferences, people like to live in Manhattan even after 9/11. So the demand curve shifts to the right, shifts to the right, shifts to the right. So we took our old price that was capped with rent control, and we notice that the new demand curve out here results in this situation. Old price, boom, boom, shortage. And again, what should price do? Right, it should move up to price. Equilibrium 1. X marks the spot. Can it, though? No, it can't. The law, a third party, government, has established what's called a price ceiling. And I'm gonna just cheat here. Okay, this is now a price ceiling. Price cannot go above it. Price wants to go above it, but it can't. Yeah, I thought I had this bad boy ready to go. So this is a price ceiling. Think of it, demand wants to go, demand doesn't move, supply doesn't move, they're all set here. Price wants to now adjust. It wants to move up to X. So it's bumping its head against this ceiling here. It wants to go up, but it can't. It's pushing upward, but it can't move up. There's just this ceiling that's in the way. And just look above your head. What keeps you from flying into space? If you were able to float around, it would be a ceiling. Now, the real kick in the pants above this whole situation is what it results in. Earlier I said this is a shortage. But what kind of shortage? It's different. It's not normal. Normally a shortage would go away because demanders would bid the price up. Competition between demanders is greater when the price is below X. But it can't go up. It's going to stay forever and ever. So what we call this is a chronic shortage. Chronic means it does not go away. It exists. It's there. It won't go away. And that gives us a unique, special little situation. If you can see this area between 0 and the quantity supplied, okay, that's nice. I guess we'll go with it. These people have apartments. Apartment landlords are renting to them. Now remember, a landlord is a business guy. He's a small business guy, maybe, I don't know, but he's a business guy. He's in it for the profit. If he cannot make a profit, opportunity cost in economics says he's stupid. If you're doing something and not making a profit, you should stop. Because opportunity cost says you can do something else with that money that's more beneficial. And, well, yeah, you just need to grab capitalist profit and maximize. Oh, you're just terrible. You're nasty guy. Well, no. Profits are good for everybody. I mean, I'll show you why. we're assuming that this is the quantity supplied. I really don't like that, so I'm going to get rid of it. This is the quantity supplied between here and here. Now it overlaps with the quantity demanded, so there are people that will rent apartments at a lower price, so that's good for them, right? But fewer apartments are offered for rent at that price. We'll explain how these people might not be benefiting as much as we thought. Meanwhile, back at the graph, the quantity demanded extends all the way out here. Let's assume if we left it alone, X marks the spot would give us PE and QE, quantity supplied and quantity demanded overlapping the same spot. At this particular spot, everybody would be buying and selling, and they'd be willing and able to buy, and everybody would be happy at this point right here. There'd be no surplus, no shortage. However, that's not the case in real life because we have the rent control, which results in a price ceiling and chronic shortage. Now, these people, quantity demanded extends outward. They say, wow, this rent's cheap. Let's go out and get an apartment in New York City. So these people right here are looking for an apartment in New York City. Will they find one? Right, they will not. There is a shortage. These people are looking but can't find an apartment at that price. Now, the real kick in the pants is they're willing and able to spend more. If the price were allowed to go to X, these people would, in fact, find apartments. But they're precluded from finding apartments because of rent control, because of price ceilings, because of the chronic shortage. Now, these people don't vote, so the government doesn't care about them that establish the law of rent control. They only care about people that live in their district. So these people are SOL. They're out on the road. Sorry, out of luck. They're not gotten any good times, but they're looking for apartments. Speaking of looking for apartments, how about these people? Remember, quantity demanded extends all the way out here. So these people are looking and they say, wow, look at this cheap rent. Let's go to the Department of New York. So they're looking and looking and looking and looking. And will they find one? No. The real kick in the pants is if everything were left alone and X marks the spot where the price and the quantity, these people are not willing and able to pay that higher rent. See, the demand curve through marginal utility establishes willing and able. They are not willing, they're not able to pay that higher price. So these people are basically wasting their time. They could have found an apartment at that price. No, they won't because they're too cheap. They're not able to, long story short. Now these people, do they benefit from a lower rent? You would think yes. But remember, landlords are profit making and they have to cut costs and costs and costs to keep a profit margin. And after a while, they might not have any cost to cut at all. This could result in really bad times like 1970s New York City. They also passed a law that said you can't kick out your renters. So landlords were stuck with people that couldn't pay enough and they weren't making enough money. They couldn't afford to maintain the building. So the building's maintenance would fall down. The elevator would stop working. After a while, they said, hey, I have insurance. Maybe I hired Guido and Tony to take care of business. And the mafia back in the 70s in New York City, that was one of their major revenue streams was arson. They would literally burn buildings so that the landlord could collect the insurance and walk away. Problem. People die. That's bad. See, New York City and New York State specifically passed laws that made it a criminal and capital offense, death penalty. If you're in cahoots and collabs, if you were in a collaboration with others, conspiracy is what they call it, co-conspirator. So even though Guido and Tony do it for the mafia and you pay them, you are also guilty and could get the gas chamber. So they stopped gassing them or burning them, and they started turning off the heat. They started turning off elevators because they just could not afford to maintain the equipment. Well, if you live up on 6 and you have to schlep your groceries up 6 flights of stairs every time, and the guy out front who controls the door, the doorman, was let go because you couldn't afford him, and you put in a little buzzer system, which somebody took a hammer to and smashed it, and now you got a crack addict selling crack on the 2nd floor landing, you don't want to live there anymore. Well, eventually enough people move out and they turn it condo, which avoids this rent control. Ladies and gentlemen, we have established a real life scenario. You can look into it more. About a distortion. A third party government comes in, establishes a price that is not X. It results in a price ceiling because price wants to go up cannot go there. Buy. Shortage.